Okay, so starting us off, I want to talk about the mental game. So I think a lot of people with interviewing, they focus on the very kind of tactical stuff. They focus on, oh, how do I do alien dictionary? How do I understand how dynamic programming works? They focus on these kind of nuts and bolts type things. And of course, you have to get good at these in order to pass the data structures and algorithms portion of your tech interview, especially for a big tech interview. But what I think is not talked about nearly enough is the mental game. So in order for you to go through this long, laborious process of studying data structures and algorithms, and then learning all these like crazy patterns, and then actually going into the interview and perform during these rounds, like you have to have a good mental game. You need to have the proper mindset. You need to have the proper mental framework so you can stay mentally healthy while you're doing all this preparation, which is why for this presentation, we carved out a section where we're going to talk about this aspect in particular, about how you can stay mentally healthy while going through this process, because this is essentially the foundation upon which you learn all the tactical stuff. Like without this, you will not be able to continue doing lead code for 1, 2, 3 months. So yeah, the first thing I want to go over is progress is exponential. I have talked with many people in the community now, like often directly, and pretty much everyone tells me like, Alex, I feel like I'm doing something wrong, because like I'm doing this like data structure and algorithm stuff, and I feel like I'm not making progress. Like I've been working at it for like 1, 2, 3 weeks now. I'm having trouble with pretty much every problem. Even lead code easies are like are just destroying me. Like, am I just not cut out for CS? Am I not cut out for software? And for all the people out here who feel like this, and I'm sure a good amount of people on this call feel like this, I just want to say it's completely normal. It's completely normal. Like data structures and algorithms is not really like a natural thing. It pushes your thinking in a way that your brain is probably not used to. And to really like drive this point home, this was me. This chart right here, this was me. So I really started getting into data structures and algorithms when I was trying to get into Facebook, which was about 4.5 years ago. And this was my process getting into Facebook. I got lead code. And then I was like, all right, I'm gonna do a bunch of lead code problems, because I've my first 2 jobs, PayPal and Coursera, I got kind of lucky. I didn't really study DSA that much, but I was able to get those offers. But I knew that wasn't going to be the case with Facebook and just big tech in general. I was like, okay, I need to get good at this, otherwise I'm not going to pass. So I did lead code pretty much every day for 3 months. I did an average of 2 to 3 hours of studying per day. And I went through probably around 150 to 175 lead code problems, alongside doing a bunch of other problems from like Geeks for Geeks and stuff I found on Glassdoor, etc. For the first, I would say, month and a half to 2 months, I felt exactly like what I just described before. I felt like I wasn't making any progress. I remember when I first started doing lead code, I couldn't do any of the easies. Like I would just open up like any lead code easy problem. And just for context here, lead code splits up problems into 3 different tiers: easy, medium, and hard. And easy is supposed to be problems that like most people should be able to get in 10 to 25 minutes, supposedly. But I couldn't figure out pretty much any of them, and I felt really, really stupid. But over time, what happens with my DSA, like studying for Facebook, and I think most people's as well, is you hit something called an inflection point. Essentially, you're going to feel really, really stupid for a long time. For a long time, like probably 50 to 70% of the process, assuming you make it all the way to the end, which is where you feel like you have pretty good mastery, which probably will take at least 2 to 3 months plus for the vast majority of people. You're not going to feel like you're making progress. So you can see here the line is like not that curvy for the first half or so, but then you're going to hit a point where like all the hard work that you've done starts paying off, and all the pieces just start like coming together. It's like hard to describe. It just happens. And I think that was the case like after 2 months for me. So like in the last month of me studying for Facebook, in that last third, like my mindset just like quickly changed, and I was able to go into pretty much any problem, any easy or medium problem at least, and some hard problems. And I felt like I was like Neo in the Matrix, because like everything just started coming together, and I could be like, oh yeah, this one, I just have to do DFS on it, or like this one has like this DP solution, or this has some sliding window. And I was able to like solve most of the problems without a bunch of hand holding. I didn't have to open the answer or look at the discussion threads. I could actually like solve the problems on the fly, and it felt amazing. So just wanted to let everyone here know is when you go into this DSA process, you just have this in mind. So when you feel dumb in that first portion, just know it's completely normal and things will get better over time. Trust me. Like pretty much, I would say 90 to 95% plus of people are going to follow this learning curve here. Yeah. Rahul, anything to add?
Yeah. If there's one thing that I want people to take away from this presentation, it's this slide that Alex put together, which is that you have to trust the process. So there's a broader discussion here around, like, are DSA questions actually a good way to assess the competency of an engineer? And I think you could make arguments yes and no. But there is one thing that data structure and algorithm questions have going for them, which is that it's fairly methodical to get better at them. And let me illustrate this by talking about something which is where it's not methodical to get better at it, right? Like, let's say that my goal is to build a startup, right? I want to build a VC-backed startup, which is going to impact a lot of people, and I'll make a bunch of money and all these things that come with a startup. And so then you could say, okay, well, in order to achieve that objective, one thing I'm going to do is on GitHub, you know how if you commit code on GitHub, you have that like green square show up? And so you could say, okay, what I'm going to do now is every single day, I'm going to commit a piece of code. So I'm going to have like this really long GitHub commit streak, and that'll be how I achieve my mission of building a startup. But that is a big disconnect there. That's my point, is the fact that there's so much that happens in building a successful startup that cannot be measured by you committing code every day on GitHub. But contrast that with data structures and algorithms questions. There's a purity, or there's a much more methodical way to get better at DSA, which is just do more of them. There's no other, it's kind of like running a marathon. I mean, it's kind of a weird analogy for me to talk about running a marathon because I've never ran a marathon before. But like with running a marathon, just run every day. There's no secret. There's no magic. Just run every single day and you will be able to run a marathon. I promise you. And so I think that's really what I think this graph illustrates, is that trust the process, trust the system, and you will get better every day. And you'll get to the point where you're going to be passing the majority of these interviews. The last time, about a week ago, or I think it was like a week and a half ago, Alex and I had a session about time management. And one of the things I mentioned in that session, that the system is much more important than a particular day or a particular outcome. That's exactly, I think, another way of framing this, which is that if you feel like you messed up today, like you didn't get any leak code problems, you messed up tomorrow, you messed up next week, it doesn't matter. Just trust the process, have blind faith in your system, and you will achieve what you want. So I think this is probably the most important slide, I think. If this is one thing you want to take away, then this is what you should take away.